like we never left. It's Double Move Sports. As always, I'm Stef Albiero. I'm here with the fantasy phenom, my guy, Alex Lott. What's up, brother? You ready to talk about some rookies in redraft today?
Yeah, I am. I mean, we've been talking about these rookies for so long in a dynasty context. I'm hyped to start looking at 2021. I mean, that season is coming up so quick. We're seeing the OTAs going down right now. And I'm excited to get into these rookies and kind of feel out which ones we want to go after. And we want to target for our rosters in fantasy football for redraft this season. There's some interesting names that are rookies, but not all of them really are guys I'm looking at wanting to roster in 2021. So I think this is going to be a super fun breakdown and a good way to get out of that dynasty mindset and start shifting more and more toward redraft. So as we know, it's a great rookie class, a lot of big names, hyped to get into it.
Now, on today's show, what we don't want to do is just rehash, repeat the same takes we've already given. We've already recorded time and time again. We had the pre-NFL draft takes looking at these prospects. We had the post-NFL draft landing spot breakdowns, talking about those through a dynasty lens. So if you want to hear more about the prospects, right, the combine times, the college production, what we expect for these guys, career-wise, who they comp to as pros that are already in the league, and how they're going to fit in on their team. We talk about all of that on that videos on our channel for all the names that we're going to talk about. But let's put the cap on this thing, on these rookies for 2021. And let's talk about them from a redraft perspective. We have redraft leagues coming up. We'll probably start drafting some of those in the next month or two. Some of the degenerates out there will start drafting in late July. But I think most drafts are going to happen August, maybe early September, with a slightly late start date of the NFL season. But let's start with these quarterbacks. And before we even talk about some of these rookies, let's talk about some of the names that have been taken recently that were rookies in redraft leagues that paid off. We had Joe Burrow last season as a high floor volume play. He was kind of coming into his own throughout the year. We had Justin Herbert, one of the incredible breakouts of last season. Even looking back years prior, we had, Josh Allen as a rookie, who was a guy that you could plug in, probably picked him up off of the waiver wire. Jalen Hurts last year coming out of nowhere and helping people make that playoff push in redraft leagues. Kyler Murray had a great rookie season with that rushing floor. But Trevor Lawrence, right now, his underdog ADP. Now, underdog is half-point PPR, but they have him going, on average, in the middle of the 10th round. I know we have some different approaches to quarterbacks on our redraft rosters. For those who haven't listened to the show, did not listen last year, we're both pretty stout when it comes to the late-round quarterback. Last year, we were smashing on names like Cam Newton, which I know now probably sounds pretty gross, but at the time, that was a great pick. He started the year hot. Joe Burrow was another name we were scooping up everywhere at the end of drafts last year. So does Trevor Lawrence fit that bill for you, Alex? Because for me, he certainly does.
I look at this rookie class, and he's the clear one that I want the most. I think his floor is the highest. I think Trevor Lawrence's upside is what we saw from Justin Herbert last season. Now, maybe the passing volume and efficiency is a little bit lower for Lawrence as a rookie, but his rushing upside could make him really match what we saw from Herbert last year. So if you're able to scoop Trevor Lawrence up in these double-digit rounds, I think you could have a really, really solid, streamable quarterback in fantasy football. And who knows, maybe he gets hot as a rookie like we expect him to do with all of this hype as, everyone's saying the best prospect since Andrew Luck, and you have something really special that you got late in draft. So with Trevor Lawrence, he's got the weapons in Jacksonville. They draft Travis Etienne, a receiving running back, in the first round. You've already got DJ Chark. You've got Laviska Shenault, who showed flashes last season. You bring in Marvin Jones. Of course, you have Tim Tebow at tight end, premier red zone threat. Joking, of course. But yeah, Lawrence, I think, has the high.
Stop. I saw today, it's like plus 1,200 for Tim Tebow to catch a touchdown this season. To me, that was easy money.
Yeah, I would take that bet. But anyway, Trevor Lawrence, to me, very, very high floor of this rookie class. But if we're looking at upside, I think we have to go a little bit deeper. You think about the names you mentioned having success as rookies. Josh Allen's, even Lamar Jackson came on in the back half of his rookie year. You've got Kyler. What do they all have in common? They can do it with their legs. So when I look even a step beyond Trevor Lawrence and I look at Justin Fields, I look at Trey Lance, those are the guys that get me excited as rookies. Guys you can take near the end of your drafts, but because they have that rushing upside, they could actually make a difference as a rookie, even if they do have those growing pains as a passer, as we commonly see in the NFL. I'm about halfway done statting out all of the teams for 2021, statting out every position, every single player. And right now, Justin Fields is over Trevor Lawrence in my rankings. He's over Matt Stafford in my rankings. And the thing that's putting him over the top there is the rushing yards and the rushing touchdowns that I expect. And with Trey Lance, you take that to the next level in terms of upside because he's even more of a mobile rushing quarterback than Justin Fields is. And if Trey Lance gets that starting job, I think he's an every week start in fantasy football.
No doubt. No doubt. He's the only guy right now, maybe him and Jalen Hurts are the only other quarterbacks I could see even getting close to 1,000 rushing yards outside of Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Kyler.
Yeah, maybe you put Kyler in there as well. I don't think Josh Allen's ever going to hit 1,000, even though he'll have those touchdowns. I have Trevor Lawrence a round or two ahead of Lance and Fields. Still love them in redraft. Right now, where those two are going, Lance is early 11th round, 123rd overall. Justin Fields going at the 12:01, 132 overall. So we're talking about these double-digit round dart throws at the quarterback position. If I'm in a redraft draft right now, I'm gladly smashing on a combo of something like Trevor Lawrence and Ryan Fitzmagic, Trey Lance, Ryan Fitzmagic, maybe even Ryan Tannehill if I can get him late, and then a Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the one thing we do know with Trevor is that he is going to be the starter from week one. That's where the hesitancy lies with Lance and Fields, and I think both of these guys, I love them equally. Lance for the rushing side, Fields because I just think Fields is that good of a quarterback and can get it done on the ground too. All of these guys should be pretty good under pressure. Specifically Lawrence, he had one of the best passer ratings while facing pressure, up there with the likes of Baker Mayfield when we talk about college prospects coming into the NFL. And that was one of the things that we saw with Joe Burrow and why he was so good. You know, eventually that O-line, you know, couldn't save him forever. But even with how terrible that Bengals O-line was last year, Burrow was still able to produce, throw 40 attempts a game, and just be a high volume, high floor redraft option in, you know, the middle part of the season before he went down. Now, Zach Wilson also fits that bill of starting from week one, but he's not really a guy I'm going to use a draft pick on. But definitely one I want to keep an eye on. If he comes out hot week one and he's on the waiver wire, you got to push your chips in on him.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw it from Justin Herbert last year, and we commonly see like hesitancy with some of these rookies. And with Herbert last year, I remember he had that first good game. And I was kind of like, okay, like I don't know if that's a flash in the pan or what. And by the time he had that second, that third, that fourth good game, guess whose roster he was on? He was on your roster in the league we're in together, and he was a great pickup at the quarterback spot. That led you to a really, really good season, got you deep into the playoffs. So I think with Zach Wilson, even with Mac Jones as well, they're two guys that you're not going to draft, but keep an eye on them. And once they show that first flash of upside, it's worth scooping them up. Maybe you don't plug them into your lineup right away. Keep them on your bench and see if that upside is there. I think it's a similar story for Lance and Fields. You said it best. Pair them with, you know, the Matt Staffords, the Ryan Tannehills, the Ryan Fitzmagics of the world. Let those other veteran quarterbacks get you through the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season while we can wait and see if Lance and Fields are going to get those starting jobs. Because if by week 6, Trey Lance is the starter, if by week 6, Justin Fields is the starter, and you've had them stashed on your bench, you might have a top 10 quarterback that you're essentially getting for free because you're able to draft them in those double-digit rounds.
And why would you put it all on the line with Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or even Matt Stafford, which I think all these guys have value pockets when you're sitting there on the clock looking at your draft boards. But why would you take one of these guys in the 6th round, 7th round, 8th round and burn the opportunity cost of a really strong wide receiver too with some massive upside like a DJ Chark when you could wait till the 10th round, even the 9th round? I mean, Trevor Lawrence with his ADP in the mid-10th, that's a smash spot. I would probably take Trevor Lawrence in the back of the ninth if I don't have a QB and I need one. That's going to be really appealing in redraft leagues, knowing that, look, if Trevor isn't all he's cracked up to be, I can hit the waiver wire, I can stream, I can go try to be an early mover for a Zach Wilson or a Mac Jones later on throughout the season. But if you had to pick between Trey Lance and Justin Fields, because these guys are going about right next to each other when we look at ADP, who are you taking of the two?
I'll take Justin Fields right now. Part of that is because I think he does have a better chance to start from week 1. I think he'll start more games this season. Trey Lance, there's a chance we don't see him until week 10. So right now it's Fields. When they're both on the field, I think they offer similar upside. I mentioned earlier, Lance does have more of a tendency to run and do more design runs. But I honestly think San Francisco's not going to need Trey Lance to play hero ball. They have a great running game. They have Kittle. They have Debo and Ayuk coming around on these jet sweeps. So I think Trey Lance is just going to be more of a guy who can run that offense and do it well and get you some upside with his legs. And for Justin Fields, I think we could start to see that pass volume in Chicago. I think he does provide the upside with his legs as well, even though his rushing attempts tend to be more, rolling out of the pocket, not finding anyone downfield and taking off. So right now it's close, but I'll still lean Justin Fields.
And I'll lean Fields too because he's the cheaper of the two options. That's the easy bet, right?
Sure.
Just go with the cheaper one if there's two guys that are right next to each other as far as what we like and what we expect them from a ceiling perspective to do year one. I think these guys are neck and neck, so just give me the one that I can get a lower price point. Now, Trevor Lawrence here being the one that, look, we know he's going to start week 1. Zach Wilson does fit that bill, but he was such a late breakout in college that it's really hard to just go all in on him on an offense that's fully rebuilt, new coaching staff. A lot of question marks there. You also have this black box of Urban Meyer and what this offense is going to look like. And we can look at what he did in college, coaching the likes of Tim Tebow, a mobile quarterback, them being a very up-tempo offense for the college ranks. The Jacksonville Jaguars schedule doesn't look incredible on paper right now. Who knows how things change once we get into the season. What do you expect from a volume perspective? Because if we're trying to reel him in and he's, yes, maybe he can be efficient, but the volume's not there, then we're just relying on him as a rusher. And with a team that has two good running backs in Etienne and James Robinson, this may be a team that just relies on the ground game.
Yeah, I actually expect the volume to be pretty decent for Trevor Lawrence. I have them just over 600 pass attempts right now, which you got to remember, there's 17 games this year, so 600 pass attempts doesn't mean quite as much this year as it has in previous seasons. But to me, I look at the Jacksonville team, and last year with, Gardner Minshew, Mike Glennon, Jake Luton, they threw 616 pass attempts in those 16 games. So I think the volume is going to be there. I think the defense hasn't gotten better enough to say that, hey, they're going to be owning these game scripts and running the clock out. So I think this is a team that's going to trail a lot in 2021, and I think that's going to force Trevor Lawrence to get some pass attempts up. And I think it could be similar to what we saw from Joe Burrow last season, but maybe even a little bit better efficiency in Jacksonville from T-Law, just because the Bengals, we saw it and we expect it from Burrow again this year. Their defense isn't great. They're going to be trailing in games, and regardless whether he's a rookie or not, it's going to require these guys to throw a lot of pass attempts. So volume-wise, I think is actually working in Lawrence's favor. Efficiency-wise is where we're really going to see what kind of value he's going to have in 2021. But by the time we get into August, that ADP might shoot up if there's some hype involved around Lawrence. But I would much rather have him in the 10th than I would some of those other guys you mentioned, the Rodgers, the Bradys. I'd rather have Lawrence in the 10th than those guys in the 6th, 7th round any day.
We're already seeing some hype out of minicamp for Laviska Shenault. DJ Chark is a polarizing name, but one that I think all fantasy players can agree does have a high ceiling just based off what he's shown in the past with a much lesser QB in Minshew. Marvin Jones was brought in, who can help Trevor Lawrence tremendously down the field, assuming he can be accurate and stay on his feet long enough, make the right reads, which, look, we're talking about a guy who's a phenomenal prospect, one of the best that we've seen in a long time. So you add that in with him going 101, the team's going to give him a chance. The team's going to go above and beyond to give Trevor Lawrence every single opportunity to be productive right out the gate. And the biggest question mark to me just comes down to Urban Meyer. And what do you think he's going to do? What kind of personnel packages are we going to be talking about? What's the play calling tendencies going to be? What happens in the red zone? And it's really hard to use college data and extrapolate that out. So that's where the risk comes in. But I think you've got to take that risk, especially in the 10th round, especially in a single quarterback redraft league. But Alex, let's move over to the running backs in redraft. And let's start with the one that's going first in this class. Is probably number one on most dynasty rankings as well. Najee Harris.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, going 18th overall, mid-second round. As far as running backs go, you're sandwiching him between Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson, Nick Chubb, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's kind of in that tier. Right below Mixon is a perfect spot for Najee Harris to be. The only worry that I have is the efficiency.
Sure.
Because we know the volume's going to be there.
Here's how I feel about Najee, and I know we're both in on him, which is exciting. He's a top 10 running back for me, and the reason being is high floor, high ceiling. I mean, that's all you can ask for in fantasy. And with Najee Harris, because we do know the volume's going to be there, we know the carries are going to be there, we know he's going to be using the receiving game, that makes Najee Harris have such a high floor. We've seen inefficient running backs finish in the top 12 just because they get carries. We saw Josh Jacobs do it last year, 3.9 yards per carry, finished as a top 10 back. We've seen Joe Mixon have extreme success with inefficiency in the past as well from a fantasy football perspective. So with Najee, because the volume's there, that provides that high floor. And the ceiling comes in what if he actually does have great efficiency? What if the Steelers offense is clicking and Najee Harris gets 13 touchdowns this year? What if the offensive line improves for whatever reason, even though they didn't do much to address it in the offseason, and Najee Harris and his talent is able to pick up 4.2 to 4.4 yards per carry? Like, that's where the upside comes in, because if he gets 250 to 300 carries and 60 to 80 targets in this offense, there's no way, barring injury, that he's finishing outside of the top 12 running backs. So I think Najee is safe, and I also think he has upside, which makes him someone I'm targeting early and often in these late first, early second rounds of drafts.
If you add up Benny Snell and James Conner from last year, we're talking 280 carries.
Yo.
In this backfield for the taking. Now, is Benny Snell going to go away completely? Probably not. He'll be a good change of pace. Breather back. I'm sure we'll get some Anthony McFarland.
Change of pace. He'll be slowing down the pace. I mean, that's about it.
Hey, you got Anthony McFarland. I'm still holding out little tidbits of hope for Run AMC, as they call him, as a third down, explosive option there. Yeah, I'm probably the only one that calls him that, to be honest. But there's also another 60, 70 targets to running backs available as offense as well. Sure. So, I mean, do we expect Najee to take all of that year one? I think that'd be a little aggressive to go and project that, but that's certainly in the range of outcomes. That's what a ceiling could be. And the efficiency could be there, even though we don't have the athletic measurables because he skipped the pro days this year. Najee Harris looks quick when he's out on the field. Him with that 230-pound, 6-foot frame, he's going to be trucking defenders. He moves like a ballerina, so he's going to juke you out of your shoes too. There's just so many ways that Najee Harris can win, and then on top of that, give him some goal line touches. I think this year, really, the debate is going to be, do you go take a Devontae Adams or an A.J. Brown or a DeAndre Hopkins or Calvin Ridley? These guys that should be the clear, one target hog on their team. Or do you take a high floor and high ceiling running back like Joe Mixon, like Najee Harris, like Antonio Gibson? I'm leaning the running back there just from the drafts that I've done. I haven't been quite as happy with those rosters where I have taken A.J. Brown, especially now with Julio coming into the picture, even though I'm still really high on him. You just got to account for that because those are the real decisions that are going to be made when we're sitting in the second round in our redraft leagues.
100%. And yeah, I think Najee is as simple and safe as they come when we look at him as a player. And if people are fading him because they're worried about the offensive line, capitalize on that. But let's go ahead and move on to a couple of these other names, Stef, that are going to have some redraft appeal, but aren't going to be as safe as a guy like Najee Harris. A couple names I want to throw out are Travis Etienne and Javonte Williams. Etienne right now going 49th overall, so that's late 4th, early 5th round. Javonte's going 66th overall, so that's the middle of the 6th round. Javonte's going as the RB27. What's your take on Etienne and Javonte? What do you think about these ADPs? And To me, I think it makes sense. I mean, I'll take Etienne over Javonte all day for 2021, especially if it's a PPR format. But what do you think about Etienne for 2021?
The difference between Javonte and Etienne is that Etienne has way less of an uphill battle
Yeah.
to overcome. We have the locker room narrative between Trevor Lawrence and Etienne. Like, T-Law's not going to be happy if his boy's not getting on the field. And this is a player that, I mean, he had a 12% target share his senior year at Clemson. 12% target share for a running back in college is exceptional. It almost never happens. And what we see most of the time, it's not the end-all be-all like most things when we talk about stats are, but most of the time, running backs that were used as pass catchers in college get used as pass catchers even more at the pro level. And I think that's where Etienne's value is going to come in. And I think he's going to be on the field from week one, from game one, getting a lot of pass catching work, probably some carries on the ground as well. We're talking 8 to 12 carries a game with something like 5 to 6 targets a game. I think that's going to be phenomenal for him. Hopefully he can break away a few of those, be a very efficient runner, get a few touchdowns. And then Javonte Williams is facing a lot more as far as the current back that's there that he has to outproduce. Even though James Robinson was this fantasy monster last year, it's more of a situation necessarily than the talent. Melvin Gordon has been, one, he was drafted a lot earlier, James Robinson undrafted. So right there alone, NFL teams are telling us how they value these guys. But with Melvin Gordon, he had some pretty strong games last season while splitting carries with Phillip Lindsay. I'm wondering if, maybe the DUI punishment finally makes it into 2021, because I don't think Melvin Gordon was suspended for any time after that. Maybe that's the one path for Javonte Williams to get on the field and play the RB1 role within the first 6 weeks of the season. I'm certainly hoping for it as an investor, but when you look at Javonte Williams at RB27, I think that's a fine ADP. The risk is already baked in there. And then for Etienne, as a guy who's going mid to late fourth round, that's phenomenal value. That fits the same appeal that DeAndre Swift had last year in leagues, where you go running back, wide receiver for the first 3 rounds, and then you get that third upside running back that if they hit, now your team becomes an instant contender to win the whole league, assuming those running backs can stay healthy, because not many teams, especially if we're talking 14-team leagues, a lot of teams don't even have 2 strong starting running backs. So if you can start your draft with, let's just say, Saquon Barkley, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Terry McLaurin, and Travis Etienne,
that's nice.
You're feeling really, really strong. You're feeling really good about that. And that's a real start that you can have. I've had those starts in some of these best ball drafts on Underdog. So Travis Etienne is the premier robust RB option. If you're circling back after that 3rd round, after you've grabbed that wide receiver 1, go ahead and take Etienne to be a strong RB3 with boom upside. And Etienne is a guy just like DeAndre Swift, has the pass catching skill set. That's his comp. If you want NFL.com right now, the NFL's telling us that they comp him to DeAndre Swift. Urban Meyer's already come out and said Etienne's going to play the 3rd down role. So this is a guy that I'm expecting to see something like 60 targets this year. And again, if those are efficient, he's going to destroy the ADP at 49th overall, late 4th round.
Yeah, I agree. Etienne to me is a better Chase Edmonds. As far as a role goes, I think it's going to be similar. You're going to get some work on the ground, going to be used a lot in the receiving game. But Etienne's just a much better player. And I think he could even exceed Edmonds' workload in 2021, especially when we see that he got that first-round draft capital, so important for running back. So I'm with you on Etienne. You get him as a 3rd running back in that scenario, especially in PPR leagues, you are set up nice. And even if you decide to mix it up and go early tight end, maybe you start out with a Saquon Barkley, you scoop a Darren Waller, you go with the Terry McLaurin in the 3rd, and you come back with Etienne as your RB2 in a PPR league in the back of the 4th round. Really strong start. So I love Etienne at that value. I'll scoop him up all day. I have been taking a lot of Etienne in these Underdog best ball drafts. And then as far as Javonte goes, I'm with you. I think as an RB3 on your roster, really good value. If he is your RB3, you have time to let him sit on your bench, see how involved he is in the offense, see if he starts to get ramped up as the season goes on. But to your point, with Melvin Gordon there, I think that does cap the upside for 2021. In that 6th round, there's probably going to be some receivers I really, really like. So that's where, I have trouble going receiver early and waiting and taking a guy like Javonte when I would rather just take an early running back and smash on a really strong receiver there in the 6th round, like a Cooper Kupp type of guy. So that's the challenge for me. And as long as Melvin Gordon is healthy, I think it is going to be tough for Javonte to see that upside. As far as that DUI charge goes, first of all, come on, Melvin Gordon, be better. But second of all, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, I think it got dismissed, or I think it got settled. So I don't think he is expected to see punishment from the NFL. But again, I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, if that came into play, it would be a big boost for Javonte, especially early in his career. But yeah, I think both these guys are fine at their ADP. I definitely like Etienne in the late 4th better than I like Javonte in the mid 6th at this point. But I think both are okay. And then as far as some deeper running backs go, Steph, let's talk about Trey Sermon. And let's talk about Michael Carter. I think these are probably the only other 2 running backs we're going to consider for redraft in 2021. Sermon right now, 74th overall, 701. That is pretty early to me. And then Michael Carter, a very polarizing player right now, going in the early 8th round, 89th overall. So, Steph, talk to me about Trey Sermon and Michael Carter, 2 guys going kind of in that next tier of running backs, guys you can definitely scoop up as an RB3 on your roster. But what do you think about these values right now?
And I got to say, I like Michael Carter's ADP. I would feel comfortable taking him there, even as an RB4.
Sure.
If I'm going with an RB-heavy roster. We know Michael Carter, even though the draft capital wasn't what we wanted it to be, he was a day 3 pick. Granted, it was early 4th round, so maybe we can round up and say it's 3rd round. But the limited investment, again, the question, just like with Zach Wilson, like, yes, we know he's going to start from week 1. We don't even know that necessarily with Michael Carter. It sounds like Tevin Coleman will start the year out, at least what the Jets are going to put on their depth chart is Tevin Coleman. Who knows, usage-wise, if that actually plays itself out. There seems to be a seniority complex in a lot of NFL locker rooms where you're just going to put the oldest guy number 1. We're going to put Mark Ingram over J.K. Dobbins to start the year. That type of mindset is what we're going to see a ton. So I'm not putting even too much stock in these depth charts that are coming out. So for that reason, I love Michael Carter just because of the insane upside that he has if he is a true 3-down workhorse in this offense that's really starting from square one with a new quarterback, new coaches, new scheme. The Adam Gase funk is kind of gone from New York. And then with Trey Sermon, I understand the appeal of a running back going to the San Francisco 49ers because a Kyle Shanahan running back's usually productive. They're usually efficient. I mean, we've seen an RB1 overall season from Devonta Freeman under Kyle Shanahan, but people are a little bit too aggressive with this, in my opinion. I actually find Trey Sermon more appealing in Dynasty if we're talking about early 7th round because this year it's a mountain to climb. It's a pretty big uphill battle for Trey Sermon to come in and not only move his way up this depth chart into enough volume to be a fantasy producing running back, but we also need him to be hyper efficient. And there's no guarantee based on what he's done in college that he is going to be a hyper efficient runner. Now, I think Trey Sermon can break tackles. He does have some pretty good pass catching chops. Maybe a year or 2 from now, he is the bona fide RB1 for the San Francisco 49ers. But right now he has Jeff Wilson. I know Jeff Wilson will probably start the year injured, but he'll be back in the lineup before you know it. Raheem Mostert still seems to be the guy there. He's on a pretty cheap deal, but he is still there, and he was the 1, or at least the 1A last season and the year before when this team was making Super Bowl runs. Wayne Gallman brought in on a 1-year deal. And then you also got Elijah Mitchell, another guy that we like. Go check out our channel. Here's some of our takes on this backfield dichotomy between Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell. But all of those factors are reasons why I hate this early 7th round ADP on Trey Sermon. I just don't see how he hits the ceiling unless all of these guys get injured and Trey Sermon comes in and is a super efficient running back, which he never really was in college. He did have some boom games, but was never able to do it consistently. He had injury issues. He had efficiency issues. We saw him have those, high workload games at Ohio State. But was that more of the workload in the situation where Fields is kind of breaking down? They got to pivot the offense, or is that Trey Sermon being just a monster? I don't know. I haven't seen enough from Sermon to really say that was him being a beast of his own on the field.
Yeah, I agree with you. And man, it's it's not that I don't think there is potential for Sermon to break out. I mean, if the ball bounces his way and he gets that starting role in San Francisco, he's going to be great. We saw JaMychal Hasty starting games and having productive weeks for San Francisco last year. Jerick McKinnon was a top 15 running back through like 4 or 5 weeks of the season. So it's definitely possible for this immaculate opportunity to open up for Trey Sermon, but taking him at the 701 is almost putting your money on that happening. Like, there's a big difference between betting on something to happen and acknowledging that there's a possibility for it to happen. And to me, Sermon at the 701 is trying to say that him breaking out this season is a likelihood rather than a possibility. So I'm out on him at that ADP. If that was 9th, 10th round, I'd be willing to take the shot on him. But in the 7th, there's just some good players on the board for me to be taking Trey Sermon there, who might not ever get a chance to get that backfield to himself with all the names that you just mentioned. And then Michael Carter, I hate how much I'm agreeing with you so far, Steph, but Michael Carter, 8th round, I'm cool with it. And he's a guy I've definitely been fading in Dynasty, but now that we are talking about redraft, Michael Carter has running back 2 upside. And in the 8th round, that's fantastic. He could be like a Nyheim Hines plus almost in New York if he gets the reps and starts to earn that job. The thing with Michael Carter is he's not going to be a 3-down workhorse. He's not going to be a James Robinson in New York. And there definitely are concerns about the offense and how it's going to be in 2021 as well. But for Michael Carter, I think the upside is there, and I think 8th round is reasonable value. Now, there is a chance that Tevin Coleman or Ty Johnson or one of these guys are the 1st and 2nd down running back for the majority, if not all of the season, and Carter is nothing more than a change of pace guy. But we're talking about Michael Carter competing with Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman, as opposed to some of these more proven assets that we've talked about already, like Javonte Williams with Melvin Gordon and Trey Sermon with Raheem Mostert, for example. So for Michael Carter, there's definitely a clear path to playing time, and that opportunity is something I look for in these rookies. I definitely want guys that are going to be on the field, even if by a matter of circumstance, than guys that have to jump several guys on the depth chart that are proven assets to get that playing time. So I'm cool with Carter in the early 8th, definitely fading Sermon in that 7th round. But yeah, these rookie running backs are fun stuff. I think by the end of the year, we'll definitely see a couple of these guys break out.
Now let's pivot to wide receiver. Let's start with Ja'Marr Chase. He's going the highest, and it seems like the cat's already out of the bag with Ja'Marr Chase. We can't even get him at a sneaky value because he's going 47th overall. That's late 4th round per underdog ADP. That's half-point PPR that we're looking at there. But when we talk about our projections, we're talking about 110 to 130 targets for Ja'Marr Chase year 1. And it seems that that's what everyone else is projecting too. So how do you feel about this late 4th round ADP here? Because you're essentially taking him as either your wide receiver 1 after you got 3 running backs, or a strong wide receiver 2 that you're pairing with a guy who will be that bona fide wide receiver 1.
I actually like the ADP because when I look at the tier of guys he's going around right now, I think it's fair. I think this is actually perfectly accurate. I'm not fading him here. I'm not saying he's a value. I think he's right where he should be because I look at the guys right in front of him in terms of ADP. You've got Chris Godwin, Robert Woods, DJ Moore, Mike Evans. I'm definitely taking all those guys over Ja'Marr Chase for 2021. And you look at the guys behind him, and you do start to get into some question marks. You got Tyler Lockett, Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson, Kenny Galladay. So he's sandwiched right in that group. I think some of the veterans I just mentioned are safer. Like a Cooper Kupp is a much safer pick than a Ja'Marr Chase. But with Ja'Marr Chase, you're getting the upside of the talent that he has. He's proven everything to us. He has the draft capital. He has the college production. Now he gets the situation in the NFL. So everything's pointing up for Ja'Marr Chase. It's just a matter of how quickly is he going to acclimate to the NFL. Even a guy like A.J. Brown had a phenomenal rookie season in Tennessee, but it took him deep into the season to consistently start making plays to get him to that high-tier wide receiver 1 caliber of wide receiver in the NFL that he was in year 2 and beyond. So with Ja'Marr Chase, I don't think it's a matter of is he going to be a good NFL receiver. I really believe he will. To me, it's just a matter of how quickly is he going to get there and how much risk am I willing to take to bet on that happening in 2021. So I expect a good season from Chase. I have him projected for over 120 targets in this Bengals offense. I think he's going to be over 1,000 yards as a rookie. So that ADP makes sense to me. And if you want a little bit of excitement and upside on your roster, in round 4, back around 4, early round 5, I think Chase is a fine pick.
The biggest concern that we're going to have with all these rookies is how long it actually takes them to get up to speed, to get fully onboarded onto the offense, and to get their coaches to trust them enough to draw up plays for them. The downside with Ja'Marr Chase is that he already has 2 other strong wide receivers that he's competing with in that Bengals wide receiver room, to where the team doesn't necessarily need to force the ball to Ja'Marr Chase right away. But you got to imagine, just based on the rapport that Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase showed back in 2019, that there's going to be a connection there, especially near the red zone, in the end zone. Here's a question for you, Ax. Here's one I haven't really spent too much time thinking about, but I have a feeling that once folks are on the clock, it's going to creep into the back of their minds. Do you have any concerns with Ja'Marr Chase not playing football throughout 2020?
No.
Is that something for you? Are you fading him at all from the standpoint of, look, he's got to get, conditioned, he's got to get ready to go? To me, it's not. I'm glad to hear that it's not for you. Don't let that cause you to fade Ja'Marr Chase or any of these rookies that sat out the last year. Yes, it's fun to get all in on Devonta Smith because we have that recency bias with the Heisman campaign, and we'll talk about him here in a moment. But the best part about Ja'Marr Chase's situation is that the volume is going to be there. And we've talked about the Bengals a ton. You can go check out a whole breakdown on the Bengals offense on our channel. We talked about this when we talked about Ja'Marr Chase coming out of the draft in his landing spot. And if you're getting him in the 4th round, the only thing that sucks, but you can hedge against this in your draft, is that, look, he might start out the year a little bit slow. So why don't you circle back and get a name like Will Fuller in the 7th round? Circle back and get a Chase Claypool in the 6th.
Steph, let's talk about this next tier, if you will, of wide receiver. I'm going to talk about 2 guys here. I think they might both be in individual tiers of their own. But first is Devonta Smith. You mentioned him earlier. Right now he's going in the mid-7th, 155th overall. And then a round later, we have Jalen Waddle going in the late 8th. Steph, with Devonta Smith, I mean, of all these rookies, he should see the most targets in his rookie season. How do you feel about him in the mid-7th? I mean, if you're getting him there, you're getting him probably as your wide receiver 4 or your flex if you went running back heavy early. Talk to me about Devonta Smith. I think that's a great ADP for him. If I can have him as a flex or as a wide receiver 4, and he's someone I can wait on once again to see how he acclimates to the NFL, I'm taking that all day.
Yeah, I mean, there's only 2 things to worry about with Smitty here. It's that, him being undersized is going to hurt his play, which based on what we've seen in college, that doesn't seem to be the case. He's exceptional against press, exceptional against man. And that's been shown in a number of different metrics, including reception perception from Matt Harmon. The other thing is Jalen Hurts, both from the volume standpoint of how many of those dropbacks is Jalen Hurts going to just take off on his own, a guy that was averaging 10 rushing attempts per game last year.
Mm-hmm.
Though that's 10 pass attempts that he's taking away, presumably. I'm sure some of those are designed plays, but presumably 10 attempts that could be going to Devonta Smith. But he goes into a situation where he can be the alpha dog from week 1. He can be a target magnet right away. They can move Jalen Reagor to play the big slot role, who can run deep routes in the slot. He can play the Cooper Kupp role there, the Tyler Boyd role, if you will. And then you can have Devonta Smith outside playing the Marvin Harrison role, playing the Terry McLaurin role, where he is a wide receiver 1 who's receiving 7 to 10 targets a game. And the Eagles are in a pretty loaded division. So I do expect there to be a lot of shootouts against the Cowboys, against the Washington football team, and against the New York Giants that have a reloaded offense as well. So all of those things get me excited about Devonta Smith in redraft. And I'm not scared at all to come out and say that Devonta Smith should be the most targeted rookie wide receiver in this entire class, just like Justin Jefferson last year. Now, volume doesn't necessarily mean what it means for, let's say, a running back, right? Why we love Najee Harris is because he is going to get all this volume. We don't necessarily know if the volume is going to lead to production and efficiency for Devonta Smith. I guess that could be another thing to factor in is Look, if he's just catching the ball and then running out of bounds because he doesn't want to take hits, or catching the ball and getting hit right away, we could run into some efficiency issues. The offense as a whole could break down because it's still pretty raw too. But all those things are baked into that 7th round. I mean, the names that we're talking about here are Will Fuller, which is another one that I love. Then, Jerry Jeudy. That's probably a pretty strong debate for me between Devonta Smith and Jerry Jeudy for this year. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that one. And then we're talking about Juju Smith-Schuster.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about, Curtis Samuel, who I'm way above consensus on. So I'm taking Samuel at that range. But then Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks, Jarvis Landry, as the list goes down. So I think there is a clear drop-off around that 8th round at the wide receiver position. So I'm trying to have 2, if not 4, wide receivers already on my roster by the time we hit the 8th round. But who would you go between Jerry Jeudy and Devonta Smith?
Man, that's so tough. I'm still going to go Devonta Smith because I think he is the number 1 on his team. I love it's tough because I love Jerry Jeudy to have a breakout season this year as well. Certainly if the quarterback situation pans out, it's going to impact my opinion on Jeudy. I'd love to see Teddy take that job. I'd obviously love to see one of these other quarterbacks that seems to be on the trade market play there as well. I'm not going to mention any names. You can probably imagine who I'm thinking of. But I think both these guys are in the same tier. I mean, it's splitting hairs to me deciding between the two of them. I'll lean Smith today. You might ask me next week, and I'll lean Jeudy. It's all about tiers at this range in the draft. And you mentioned a couple of the guys behind Smith, but I would take him and Jeudy ahead of some of the guys going in front of them in ADP. You look at Deebo Samuel, I'll take Smith and Jeudy over Deebo Samuel. You look at DJ Chark, I'll take him over DJ Chark. Even over Chase Claypool, might be a hot take, but I'm taking Devonta Smith and Jerry Jeudy over Chase Claypool right now, even in redraft. So, all those guys are probably in the same tier, but those are the 2 guys leading that tier for me. So I do love the value with Smith. Steph, let's pivot over quickly. We don't have to talk about it for too long because I already know your thoughts. Jalen Waddle going in the back of the 8th, going only like a round after his own teammate Will Fuller. We've had this debate.
It's not going to stop.
Waddle as a prospect. You were out on him. I'm in on him. But even for me, I mean, the late 8th is a little bit rich for Waddle. I get what he can do down the field. I get what he can do after the catch with the ball in his hands. But from a volume perspective, he easily could be the number 3 wide receiver target for Miami this season, behind Devontae Parker, behind Will Fuller. You have Mike Gesicki there as well. You have Tua, who's probably not going to be a high-volume passer on a team with a good defense. So to me, Jalen Waddle is one of these boom or bust. If he breaks the 50, 60-yard touchdown, he has a solid week, but that's about it. I think of like a Nelson Aguilar from last season. I feel like that's kind of like the upside we're looking at with Jalen Waddle. You can stream him here and there, get some good weeks, but I have trouble believing that Waddle is going to take over as a target hog in Miami that you can trust starting week in and week out. And for that reason, the late 8th is a little bit too rich for me right now. Now, Waddle later on in his career, look at our Dynasty content. If you haven't heard us break that down, I think into 2022, when Will Fuller is gone, he's on a 1-year contract, and Devontae Parker's a year older, we start to get a little bit interesting on Waddle's outlook. But for 2021, it's going to be an uphill battle for him to have consistent fantasy production.
Love the Nelson Aguilar comp there, just from a fantasy perspective. One that came to mind for me was Hollywood Brown last year. Was another guy that was a high upside boom-bust option. You're taking about the 8th, 9th round. Jalen Waddle fits into that range as far as ADP goes, but I'm not in on him, man. Give me Laviska Shenault, who's going 2 spots lower than him in underdog ADP. Give me
Antonio Brown.
Another good one. Great call out there. As we look down the list, we got names like Mike Williams, who's pretty appealing there, with Herbert ascending. Hopefully he can be healthy for a whole season. We might finally see the Mike Williams breakout. But, I mean, I would move Waddle down to that Mike Williams range, to be honest with you, man. These are both like these just – you don't know what's going to happen on a weekly basis.
You hope for a touchdown.
Maybe even 2 or 3 touchdowns if things start going their way. But you're right, man. I think really what you're going to see more from Waddle this year when he gets on the field is going to be special teams play. He's going to be returning kicks and punts.
Yeah, I'll scoop him in DFS now and then, I'm sure. But, Steph, I want to go ahead and get into this last tier for today's purposes of wide receivers. Guys going in double-digit rounds. We have Rondale Moore going in the 12th, Elijah Moore going around the same range as Rondale. Then you have Terrace Marshall in the 13th, Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 14th, Kadarius Toney in the 15th, Josh Palmer in the 15th. So a lot of names there, a lot of rookie wide receivers. This is the range of flyers in your draft. 12th plus round, you're looking for guys that have that upside and breakout potential. Of all the guys I just named, Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore, Terrace Marshall, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kadarius Toney, Josh Palmer, Steph, I want you to pick one or two of them in those double-digit rounds that you are scooping up in all your drafts because you think they're a sleeper that has that upside value. I want to hear it. I think I know who it's going to be, but I'll kick it over to you and see who you got.
Yeah, the first one will definitely be Elijah Moore. I think he's head and shoulders number one in this tier. The only thing holding me back from putting Moore even higher, putting him in that 10th, even 9th round, would be the fact that Jamison Crowder, as of right now, is still signed. He's still on the team. He is not cut yet. Now, that could...
The second he gets cut, that ADP is going to climb, I have no doubt.
Exactly. That was my next point. So, yeah, that's... And same thing for a lot of players this year. Same thing for Mac Jones. Same thing for Justin Fields and Trey Lance. All these situations where it's like, if we start the year and the incumbent is gone or is not going to play or gets hurt or whatever might happen, you're going to see these values start to skyrocket for these guys. But as of right now, Elijah Moore is the clear name to take. And even if Jamison Crowder is there, I still like Moore for later in the season. He'll probably start the year on waiver wires, whether that's because he's not picked up or because teams just start to drop these guys once they're not producing. Could be a guy that you circle back on, pick him up off waivers down the stretch and see if he can take over as Zach Wilson's number one target. He has one of the best profiles all around in this class. He has the athleticism. He has the college production. He has the early declare. He's done it against top competition with A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf. So you got to love Elijah Moore. And the next one, you already know it. It's my boy, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I've scooped him up in almost every single draft lately. He's going 93rd overall. That's late 14th round. Give me that all day because this is one of the last guys in this range, if not the last guy in this range, that should be the wide receiver one on their team, should see the most targets. And one of the things I like about Amon-Ra St. Brown is he's playing with a quarterback that's known for not having an exceptional average depth of target, and all the other wide receivers on his team are field stretchers. Brashad Perriman's a field stretcher. Quintez Cephas is what you typically think of as a guy who's going to stretch the field, play that downfield contested catch role like Kenny Galladay. Tyrell Williams is just a pure speedster. He's pretty one-dimensional. So you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy who can catch the ball deep. He was very efficient in college, but can also just be a target magnet underneath. Could play a Jarvis Landry role on an offense that's probably going to be throwing the ball a ton. How efficient they are from a touchdown perspective, who knows? How excited are we for Jared Goff? Probably not that excited. But the fact that in the 14th round, I'm getting a guy who could be the wide receiver one for his team is phenomenal. And so even in Dynasty, I'm grabbing him early just because I want that value increase after year one when the production is there. And then one other thing with Amon-Ra St. Brown, I know we've talked about his brother being a current pro for the Packers, but then his dad, John Brown, was a 2-time Mr. Universe, a 3-time Mr. World. This guy was one of the premier bodybuilders in the 1980s. and honestly, I was going back and watching some ASB film, some of this Amon-Ra St. Brown film at USC. This guy's exceptional just strength-wise when you watch him on film. I'm not a big film grinder. I don't know the ins and outs of everything football. But when I'm watching it, the way that he's stiff-arming guys, the way that he moves with the ball in his hands.
Holy smokes.
He can be pretty aggressive. Now, I'm going down narrative street in the hardest way here. But I like Amon-Ra St. Brown a lot, man. I think he has the athleticism to get it done.
I'm looking at Amon-Ra St. Brown's father, John Brown, right now. This dude is an absolute unit. So, well, yeah. I mean, I'll buy the take, Steph. And John Brown's also a receiver for the Vegas Raiders. So, same name. Coincidence? I think not. Ironically, you mentioned his ADP. Right now he's going at 168th overall. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going right behind Emmanuel Sanders. What are we doing, people? Christian Kirk. What are we doing, people? And John Brown, ironically, going just in front of Amon-Ra. So I'm with you. You got a guy who could be the number one on his team in Amon-Ra St. Brown as an absolute value in these drafts. I'm taking him all day. And I'm with you on Elijah Moore. I'm all over that Elijah Moore hype train. Even if Crowder doesn't get cut, Part of me hopes he doesn't, because then he's actually going to be a value. Because if that narrative street starts to take place when Crowder gets cut, it's like, oh, Elijah Moore's the new Crowder plus. Like, people aren't dumb. They're going to catch on to that, and his ADP might get him to a place where he's overvalued. And I want to get Elijah Moore in the 13th round. So I hope that my draft and all my drafts and all my leagues can take place while Elijah Moore is still going in the 13th, because I think it is a tremendous value. And we've hit on some other guys here. I mean, Rondale Moore, Terrace Marshall, Kadarius Toney, Josh Palmer. I think all these guys have some merit to being sleepers. I think you and I both are clearly the highest on Elijah and Amon-Ra at their values, but go and check out our old videos. We have several videos out on these rookie wide receivers. We hit on Rondale Moore, Terrace Marshall, Toney, Josh Palmer. We hit on some of these guys in depth, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to their rookie years, because a couple of these guys will break out as rookies, I have no doubt.
Yeah, Rondale Moore going late 12th right now, 144th overall. I don't mind it, but I expect more from him as he ascends throughout his career. Still have a lot of guys that he's going to have to fight through on that depth chart, including a guy that's just as fast as him and was brought in to pretty much play the same role, Andy Isabella. That project's kind of fallen off. But, you know, even when we look at Andy Isabella, like, that's still a guy that he's going to have to compete with. And then you have Christian Kirk, and then you have DeAndre Hopkins, and then you have Chase Edmonds, you know, all these other options. And then you have Kyler Murray running the ball himself. So it's just hard from a volume perspective to see it being there, whereas with the other two, I think you can see it. Now, one more I want to talk about before we talk about Kyle Pitts is Josh Palmer. Because
yes,
I didn't even really look into this guy until he was drafted by the LA Chargers. Right now, it's Keenan Allen. Then it's Jared Cook. It's
Mike Williams.
It's Trey McKitty. It's Austin Eckler.
Jalen Guyton.
Jalen Yikeson. That was terrible. But for Josh Palmer, there's nothing that I see when I look at his profile that he really pops off the page. But you just have to take the gamble on this guy. This is one of those things where, look, you have to know what you don't know. We don't know everything as these armchair analysts sitting at home thinking we know everything about football and just looking at the stats. Obviously, the Chargers felt like Josh Palmer was the guy to bring in as a weapon for Herbert. Now, look, I'm not even saying I like Josh Palmer as a player. I don't know the first thing about him. I haven't watched the tape. I can look at some of his Tennessee production, and it's not great, but we also know the Tennessee passing game wasn't great either. The 22.8% target share as a senior is nothing to laugh at. But I think he has to be worth the dart throw. If you're going to try to go out,
he's absolutely free.
You're getting him in right now.
Last round.
15th, 16th round. So if we're just talking about these late names to take, it's Josh Palmer, actually over Kadarius Toney. Palmer's moved up for me. I've kind of fallen off Toney a little bit in redraft. But Josh Palmer just has that appeal as a pure dart throw that could be. I mean, you're literally, again, going back to Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's a guy that, look, if we know Keenan Allen's going to be there, but Keenan Allen hasn't exactly been healthy his whole career.
Same for Mike Williams.
Same for Mike Williams, right? So, I don't know. There's a chance for this guy to get on the field, and if he shows out, I mean, this is going to be someone that everyone's going to rush to the waiver wire for. Maybe you can beat the hype train by picking him up at the last pick of your draft. Now, Kyle Pitts.
Pick him. That's all we got to say is pick him. Pick him.
It's funny, right? Because when we talked about Kyle Pitts initially after landing spot came out, it was, look, the hype train's too real. We don't know if the volume's going to be there. Rookie tight ends almost never produce, even if they have the draft capital of a TJ Hawkinson or Noah Fant, or if they have the athleticism of a Darren Waller or a Vernon Davis, these incredible tight end prospects athletically. Early 6th round, 52nd overall. No Julio Jones now. How are you valuing Kyle Pitts? Because I know before Julio left, you already had him at around 100 targets.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Kyle Pitts has broken the simulation on these tight ends. I mean, he's already an outlier. He's 4th overall pick in the draft, highest a tight end's ever gone. First time a tight end's ever been the first non-quarterback drafted. He goes to a great landing spot with high passing volume, and now there's an even bigger path to targets, and he's going to be the number 2 target on this team, hands down. It's going to be Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, and I think Julio Jones leaving just tells me we're going to see Kyle Pitts split out wide more with Hayden Hurst in line. We're going to see Kyle Pitts in the slot. We're going to see Kyle Pitts in the red zone. We're going to see him all over the field. And yeah, it's wheels up for Kyle Pitts. I mean, he could get close to 120 targets this season. I made a hot take a couple weeks back saying he's going to go for 10-plus touchdowns as a rookie. Feeling even more confident about that now in Atlanta. He's going to be that primary red zone threat for Matt Ryan. So yeah, wheels up for Kyle Pitts. I think his ADP is going to climb. I think we're still early enough off of that Julio Jones trade to where the ADP is still lagging a little bit. I do expect it to rise as we get into August and the bulk of these drafts. But, man, yeah, I'm taking Kyle Pitts everywhere. And if I do miss out on that, it used to be like if you miss out on Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, you either wait till the middle rounds for Andrews and Hawkinson, or you just wait till the very end of your draft. Now I think Kyle Pitts actually gives a little bit of merit to maybe you do miss out on Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, but you take Pitts a couple rounds later and cash in on that upside that he's going to have as a rookie.
Everybody loves Darren Waller. We're seeing Darren Waller pass George Kittle.
Yeah.
In terms of ADP on a lot of draft kits that I've seen from around the fantasy community. We love Darren Waller because he was 5th in routes run at the tight end position, 3rd in route participation, was number 1 in terms of targets and target share, top 3 in air yards and air yard share, and number 1 in red zone targets. All of those factors can come into play for Darren Waller. And even if we look at some deeper names that are going a little bit later in drafts, like Logan Thomas, I mean, Logan Thomas led all tight ends in routes run and routes from the slot last season. I think Kyle Pitts can absolutely contend with that in year 1 now that Julio Jones is gone. They're going to have to rely on this guy. And honestly, if we're just talking utilization, that was one of my biggest concerns. And now it's almost like the team has no choice but to utilize his pass-catching skill set a lot more than his blocking skill set. And they can let Hayden Hurst, to your point, set up in line and play the blocking role. They don't have to ask Kyle Pitts to be a run-blocking tight end. And I think this team's going to run a lot of play action. And this offense is actually going to look more different than we expect. I would not be surprised if the volume takes a pretty significant dip with Arthur Smith at the helm, knowing that, look, we don't have Julio Jones. Like, that's pretty straightforward, right? That's not a hot take. You're not going to pass the ball as much when you don't have Julio Jones. But even with that, Kyle Pitts is still a guy not only you have to take a gamble on, because just like Kelsey last year, he could be the difference maker. He could be an actual league winner in fantasy drafts. And we're looking at guys in the range. It's like Myles Gaskin, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson. Now, some of those could be league winners. You know, Kareem Hunt, Deontay Johnson. Like, names like that aren't necessarily going to win you leagues either. So if you're looking for just an advantage, I think Kyle Pitts in this 5th round is worth the gamble. And I think if you do take him, you take a shot later on. Go and get yourself, a Blake Jarwin in the 13th round if you can. Just a way to hedge if he does get off to a slow start, or if he takes the same route that all rookie tight ends do, which is underperform. But Alex, I think that's it for today's episode. We're creeping up on redraft season fast. Anything else to add before we sign off?
No, just join our Discord. I mean, we're having a blast in there, starting up dynasty leagues in there, doing all sorts of stuff, answering questions, really getting hyped for this season. So that link is down below. We'd love to hop in there with you and chat some dynasty, some redrafts, and all sorts of things NFL. So join the Discord if you haven't. You're going to be hearing a lot more from us as we continue to get closer to opening kickoff. Super hyped.
If you guys like the show, a like and a sub always appreciated, and we'll see you next time. Peace.